Welcome to the Australian Weight Loss Surgery Podcast, where every 2 weeks we explore all the aspects of the weight loss surgery journey. You'll hear from a range of experts including bariatric surgeons, psychologists, patients and dietitians sharing up-to-date informative advice to help fast-track your long-term weight loss success.
Now today I'm talking to a woman who needs no introduction in the bariatric realm, Amanda Clark, award-winning advanced practicing dietitian with over 20 years of experience working with bariatric patients. She's the author and creator of Portion Perfection for Bariatrics, a set of tools designed to keep portion sizes in check for maximising the effectiveness of bariatric surgery and keeping your new stomach nice and small. Amanda consults from great ideas in nutrition, in the Tweed and in Lismore, and also online. Stay tuned, you're not going to want to miss this one. So welcome to the Australian Weight Loss Surgery Podcast. Today I have the pleasure of Amanda Clark's company. Welcome, Amanda. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Jacqui. It's my pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you and your wisdom again. More than 20 years of experience as a dietitian. Also created your own portion management dining wear for different groups, the weight loss group and also the bariatric group. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I really believe that the more things you can do to your environment to support the behavior you're trying to follow, the better. So, there's good evidence that the size of the containers that you use, the size of the plates, etc., all influence how much you serve onto that plate or into that bowl, and that once the food is in the plate or the bowl, chances are you're going to eat it. So if we can go a couple of steps before that and get the right amount in there, then you can feel more satisfied and life just gets easier. So that's the basis of portion perfection, really, helping people to know how much is right and follow through.
It is a surprise how much is right when you look at how far our cutlery and our crockery have come in the last even 30 years. You look at the 1950s dinner plate and it was the size of our entree. So I think we feel compelled to load up. I know our dinner plates are massive and I'll often eat off an entree plate because I know exactly the same thing. If I put it on the plate, I'm definitely going to eat that.
Yeah. I think also our bowls, I've got some beautiful bowls that are really large and kind of flat, but try putting a quarter of a cup of muesli in there and it's just a sprinkle across the bottom. So
it's a bit sad looking.
Yeah, automatically you wouldn't stop at that. So yeah.
And that's exactly right. Like looking at what a portion is. And I think to visualize that on a regular basis, particularly after weight loss surgery, is really important. Yeah, people have chosen the surgery for the purpose of having a smaller appetite. So do they still need to have a look at their portion management after the surgery, or does their new tummy take care of all of that?
Yeah, well, bariatric surgery works in a number of ways, and one of them is that it gives you a smaller stomach, but it also results in production of much higher levels of satisfaction hormones, which also impacts how much you feel like eating. And that is the case for about the first year. And having that higher level of satisfaction hormone also spills across into your saliva, and that makes some foods taste a little different. So, some people might describe that sweet foods don't taste as good anymore, and that's quite handy, but that's why that happens, weight loss that we see after bariatric surgery. But some of those effects wear off. So the higher levels of hormones and the effects on your taste, both of which make you less interested in food, wear off after about the first year or two. So then we're mainly falling back on your stomach size. And the thing is about stomachs is that they're stretchy, and it's quite possible that some people or some families just have stretchier stomach membranes than others, which just makes it easier to eat a larger volume. As you go down the track, the more you eat, the more you can eat. So part of the message of satisfaction comes from the tension in your stomach wall. So you've got a nerve ending on your stomach called the vagus nerve, and that senses the stomach tension and sends a message to your brain to say that you're satisfied. So if you eat past the point of satisfaction, or you drink within half an hour, so you've had a 1 cup meal plus you then add 1 cup of liquid, then you're going to stretch the capacity of your stomach beyond that 1 cup. And the more times you do this, the less resistance to the stretch you will feel. So the easier it is to overeat, and the less sensitive is that nerve message that goes to your brain.
Like any other neural pathway, if you keep using that, you will change that understanding of what the limits are. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it can start to become less sensitive, to not be such an alert, because you keep doing it, you keep overriding it, so it'll stop sending you the message. Just like an appetite message or a message to go to the toilet. If you ignore that, you stop getting the message.
Fascinating little machines, aren't we? It's incredible what we can do, but also what we can, intervene and mess up a little bit. We talk about the first year or two being the honeymoon period. Weight's dropping off, appetite and tastes have changed, and food's not as interesting as it used to be maybe for the first time in these people's lives. Is that the time to really make sure you're setting up those great habits and making sure you understand what's next and how to manage those stages when hunger and tastes might change and you are more hungry?
Absolutely. I really say that first year is your opportunity to get the lifestyle right, so that when that hunger comes back, you've got things covered. And, I think just thinking about the stomach, and I know by definition we're a podcast and therefore people can't see us, but if people can imagine a balloon, a new balloon fresh out of the packet. And when you first blow up a balloon, you kind of blow a little bit of air in there and it just puffs up a little bit. And then you have to blow harder to blow it up further. There's resistance to going further, but you can do it. And the more times you do it, the easier it is to blow it up. And that's a bit like your stomach. If you imagine that first little puff is that 1 cup and you force it past there for whatever reason, something tasted great, there wasn't going to be food for a long time after, whatever the reason is, you start to do that extra inflation. And once you do that, if you imagine a balloon that's been blown up multiple times, once it comes back down, it's all a bit puckered and it never comes back to the same level of elasticity that was there in the first place. So fresh after surgery, people are probably on half a cup. By about 6 months, we're up to about a cup. And then we want to stop there and we want to stay there and never eat more than 1 cup of food ever again, unless or until you've gone too far, you've lost too much weight, and we're trying to find ways to help you regain weight. Most people don't actually reach that point. So you want to maintain the value of this new tool that you've got.
I guess tools are the surgery, but also the external tools like your portion plate and bowl, to visualize on a really regular basis just what a meal looks like and how much a cup of food is. Just a reminder. I think we can get busy or stressed or, life gets in the way. And I think having those ready in the kitchen is a really good way of sometimes we need a reset, but also to maintain that habit of how big a meal could be. I think it's a great tool. So is it possible, looking at the size of the portion, you're saying half a cup initially, 1 cup, as time goes on. How do we go getting the nutrients we need from these 1 cup meals?
You can't get everything that you need. And so that's where BN Multi comes in. That's where you must be taking bariatric multivitamins. So, I'd generally be recommending 3 1-cup meals a day. So that's breakfast, lunch, dinner. But I'd also recommend 3 snacks. And so you've got 3 cups in your meals. The snacks might be, I generally base snacks on 100 calories rather than volume. So it could be anywhere from the size of 6 macadamia nut right up to an apple. So an apple's probably about a cupful, 6 macadamia nut, only 2 tablespoons worth, but both the same calories. But if you take the basic nutritional recommendations for adults generally, and you look at what volume that adds up to, it actually adds up to 8 cups or more per day to get the minimum amounts of everything you need. So we're not going to manage that after bariatric surgery. And that's kind of one of the downsides, because it does mean that you're not going to get enough vegetables either. But anyway, that's why you need to make really good food choices most of the time, so that you can get sufficient protein, essential fatty acids, phytonutrients, so those plant-based chemicals, which aren't technically vitamins, but they enhance our health. So they protect us from heart disease and cancer. But that's why you need the vitamins as well. And, often I find people down the track from surgery who have stopped taking their vitamins, or they've stopped taking the bariatric vitamins. But I really tell people that I think it's really important to stick with a bariatric vitamin company, because the other companies like Centrum or whoever, they don't care about bariatric needs. So there's a lot of research being done around nutrition, and bariatric companies are going to be listening to that research and looking at the guidelines and making sure that the supplements comply with that, whereas Centrum's not doing that. So, if you're not going to pay full attention to what you're doing and make a concoction of a whole lot of different things, then just make it easy on yourself and be taking that bariatric vitamin.
And I guess too, that's the formulation that will make up for the shortfall in your intake, but also links to the malabsorption that's left behind by the surgeries as well. So smaller portion sizes and almost half of what a normal person would be eating, but also in some different surgeries, there's links to malabsorption in different nutrients as well. So making those up.
And I think, a lot of people don't think of a sleeve as being a malabsorptive surgery because it's really technically a restrictive surgery. But I think when you take into account the decrease in stomach acid and the importance of stomach acid for the solubilization of a variety of nutrients, it is actually a malabsorptive surgery as well. So there are, as you know, there are certain things that you need more of. There are certain things that you need a different form of to get that best absorption. And, general supplements aren't thinking about that.
No, very broad brush. I think when you think of something that's got everything from A to zinc, it's going to be a tiny little bit of everything, just a smattering. I talk a little bit about the factory floor and maybe sweeping everything up and putting it in a tablet. But I'm a bit biased. I'm pretty committed to getting it right.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, it makes, it's easier for everybody if you've got a correct formulation that you can trust as a practitioner and that your patients can rely on, and we see the results in the blood tests. I think it speaks for itself really, which is, it's a wonderful product. And it's working, and we're really proud of it. So thank you for supporting it and giving the backstory on why it's so important to make sure it's specific in the supplementation as well. Yeah, moving on to regain. We get a lot of questions about regain. Down the track after weight loss surgery, do you find, how prevalent is regain in your practice? Is it something that you're working with on a regular basis?
Yeah, so certainly I see a lot of people down the track. So I might see them for the first time down the track. I've got a lot of people who I see from a distance, and maybe they've reached that 3 or 4 year or 7 year mark. They've regained some of their weight. They're feeling bad about that. So, the evidence says that you can expect to regain about 20% of the weight that you lost straight after the surgery, and that usually happens within about the 3 to 5 year period after surgery. So to a certain extent, we need to consider that it's normal, that there's a normal pattern that you'll reach a certain level in year 1, and then in year 5, it'll be something different. So I think it's really important not to feel like you're a failure or not to feel that this is all out of control, but there are some things that you need to look for. Part of the reason for the weight regain is that bodies like to work their way around changes that have been made to them. So that higher level of satisfaction hormone goes away, the changes to your taste wear off. So then that's when people start to notice some old favorites coming back because they can now taste them. They're getting kind of desires for some other food. But that's part of that reason for developing the really good routine in year 1. You want to be in a routine, and you don't want to keep testing it out by going back to old ways. You just want to trust in the new way. So if, the idea is in that first year, you get ready so it can get you through this real danger period.
Correct.
But I do see 2 main issues from an eating perspective. So one is that people have stretched their stomach capacity, so they're eating greater than 1 cup of food by then, or they've started grazing. So with increased portion size, and I've actually seen people able to comfortably eat 5 cups of food in one sitting down the track after surgery. Yeah. And, part of that just might come down to either really poor messaging from that nerve to the brain. So they're not getting that feeling of, I feel uncomfortable, I need to stop now. Even though their stomach is uncomfortable, they're not recognizing it. Or they just have a stretchy stomach and they're not getting that stomach tension. There are reasons why people have reached a high weight in the first place. And I don't think we know everything about them. And the surgery doesn't necessarily resolve every problem. So some of those problems still exist.
Once they are able to take in such a large, well, we talk about large portion size, but larger than the 1 cup, is that something they can come back from with retraining their, going back to the plate and the bowl and being very vigilant? Or do then they feel more hungry because there's more of room available than there was before? What do you think about that?
Yeah, maybe. It depends really what's going on. But the same as like before people had surgery, if you reduce your food intake, you're hungry. But if you keep doing it, by about day 7 or day 10, you're feeling fine on a smaller quantity of food. So there is some adaptation that can help you come back down. I certainly have had a client who he lost something like 40 kilos and in his first year. And then I saw him again just after the end of year 2, I think it was. And he'd just been on an 87-day cruise. Oh. He said it was all silver service and he knew exactly what he was doing, but he wasn't prepared to let it go. And he regained 40 kilos.
Really? In the 87 days?
Yes.
Wow.
The lot. Everything.
Committed.
And in fact, because I get to do body composition analysis on him, in fact, although he was the same weight that he started out, he had not regained all the muscle that he'd lost. So he was more fat than he had more body fat than he did first time around at that weight.
Incredible.
But I guess the moral of the story is we did get him straight back to his old routine, and he actually lost weight quite rapidly, and last time I saw him he was well on the way to being back to where he was. So I don't know, that's an amazing story. Yeah, we've got to keep him off the water.
I think those cruises are a trap, aren't they? Because you feel, and I guess too it happens in restaurants after surgery and when we're buying food, is you feel like you've paid for it. And so if you only get to eat a small portion of what you've paid for, some mindset can kick in. And a lot of us grew up in a time where we were on tight budgets, and you know what I mean? We were brought up in a time where we didn't waste anything. And I think there's something to be said for the way even my parents, we weren't allowed to leave the table until we'd eaten what was on our plate, but we didn't put it on our plate. Someone else dished it up for us. And you're not leaving, one of 5 children, you're not leaving the table until you've eaten everything there. And we were bursting. And so even from that perspective, that's a habit that gets set up by your environment, really, by someone who's loving you with food, firstly, but also by someone who has 5 children to feed and doesn't want to waste anything. So eat your dinner or you're not going anywhere. So my understanding also for a time was that at the end of a meal, I needed to be feeling that pain and that stretching almost because it felt normal. Do you know what I mean? So I do wonder how much of that comes into it is, a lot of our, family of origin, there's so many different things that impact the way that we eat and our understanding of food. And then, to change that and turn it upside down, it's significant.
You do need to be willing to let go. And what I try to help people to focus on instead is that the eating is pay more attention to the effort that was put into it, or the ambience, the company, the whole environment, the environment of a restaurant. You're not just paying for that food. In fact, the food component of the cost of the meal is quite a small component. So recognize that you're still getting everything else. And, you can either tell them, put half of that in a container from the very beginning, so you're not even faced with it being on your plate. But
it's a bonus, isn't it? Have a beautiful meal tomorrow as well.
Exactly. Yes. So, sometimes I shift people to the standard portion perfection, which might be 1,300 calories and has 3 cups of food.
Right.
But 1,300 calories should result in weight loss for most people, but it is that larger volume. So if we're stuck with that, we can still do it, but it means we're kind of upping the vegetable intake, which is a good thing. So apart from that, then we've got the grazers. So grazing is where people are still only able to eat a small quantity at a time. So they might still have good restriction in their stomach, but they're eating perhaps more than 6 times in a day. or in some cases, they might only feel like they're eating about 6 times a day. But in fact, when I question them, they're having a standard size meal and they're just eating it over an hour and a half. So we need to put a limit on the time that a meal takes. And I would say 20 minutes to 30 minutes maximum. What you haven't eaten, then it is the end of the meal.
That's a really good guide. I do hear that I'm eating more slowly, but when do I stop? And that's a really good recommendation. And is it true that it's about 20 minutes when food goes into your tummy or anybody's tummy? Isn't it about 20 minutes before the brain actually goes, food is coming in,
exactly,
and starts to set up that physiological response to food being in the tummy? I always say in my, to my patients and that sort of thing, if you're feeling like you want seconds, just wait 20 minutes, go and do something else, maybe go and have a shower, perhaps you'd clean your teeth or do something. And by that stage, you've probably forgotten about that second helping, because those whole physiological responses to the food being there are actually registering, which speaks to the slow eating and chewing really well. And I think recognizing that digestion starts in the mouth, so the act of chewing is actually the beginning of that, here comes food, which also helps with absorption, and we need as much of that as we can. So all those gastric juices that get released when we chew food properly, and salivary amylase and that sort of thing. So that's, it's a really great guideline for people who aren't sure how much they're eating and for how long, but also to understand that 20-minute period is, you're not going to feel busting full because you haven't registered that food yet.
That's right. That if we think about that tension in the stomach wall, that doesn't start to happen until towards the end of the meal. Before that, there isn't enough food in there. There are a few other things that start to trigger some hormonal release, but everything takes time, and it takes time to get to the brain. So, I think what you've described is what I'd call a distraction technique, where you tell yourself you can have seconds if you need them, but you're going to go and do this first and then decide whether you still want it. That way, there's no feeling of deprivation. You're not saying you're not allowed to have more, that's it. Tell yourself, if I still want it after I go and do these things, and maybe agree to do a few things off a list of nice things that you've got to do that might get you involved enough so that you've completely forgotten about the food. And most people do forget.
Yeah, I find it a great technique. As far as grazing goes, what do you implement to break that kind of continual intake, like you're saying, that adds up at the end of the day to be way too much food?
Yeah, well, a big part of that is making sure you're setting up your environment. So actually using something like the snack containers, or planning out what your snacks are going to be, so that there is a definite end to it. So not eating nuts from a pack and thinking that your stomach's going to tell you when you've had 100 calories worth, because it won't. But planning what you're going to do, planning what you're going to do afterwards, so that you do get out of the kitchen. You're not sitting there going, now what will I have? But, if you can tell your brain, if you can plan things in advance and know that, that orange there I've got set aside for my afternoon tea, your body will come back to help you. And when it comes to afternoon tea time, that orange will come to mind most of the time. But if you've put no thought into it, you might find yourself thinking about biscuits, or looking for something else that might be in the pantry. So
there's no real limit then, is there, of that? You just open the cupboard and whatever jumps out first is what's eaten.
Exactly.
I know. And this year of the birth of working from home and having routine thrown out the window, those sorts of things are the very things that we need to keep in place as far as structuring goes. I've even just said, pack your lunch like you're going.
Exactly.
Just pretend.
I've suggested that as well. And people have found that really useful.
Yeah, I think that's the key.
Yeah, because most people say if they pack their lunch when they're going to work, then they're fine. It's all they've got. It's what they're stuck with. And there's no problem with that. But when you're back and forth to the kitchen, then, it's good to have made some decisions earlier in the day, perhaps when you're in a clearer frame of mind and you've just had breakfast, so food's not on your mind. Then actually set out on the bench top what your morning tea is, and set some little alarms, because you haven't got the the structure of everybody else heading to the tea room, or, that
timing. I find I've been working at home for quite a while, but I find 3:00, I'm like, it's time. It's really, I have fallen into that routine. So with the practice, and that's what it is, but it needs that prompt to begin with as well when it's new. And those external structures of, everybody's getting up and going, it must be time. It's certainly been an upside down year for what's been going on in the kitchen.
Yeah, definitely. So, we need to set some of our own structure. And, often I find mums who make sure that their children have their lunches packed for school, but they don't pack anything for themselves. And, I think just being that organised so that as you pack theirs, you pack yours.
Yeah. I had a hungry teen at home. It's homeschooling, and I would pack lunch and he would take it downstairs, and he wasn't allowed in the kitchen until after school.
Yeah.
It's costing us a fortune. Yeah, exactly. So with talk of regain, I know there's, a few years out, people do think more surgery might be the solution to their regain. What are your thoughts on going from a sleeve to a bypass, or having some other medical intervention for a weight gain situation?
Yeah. Well, it certainly is something that's quite common. And, we see people having 2 and 3 surgeries. Actually, I think I heard a really interesting speaker at the last bariatric conference, perhaps you heard her as well, who really said that before we leap into another surgery, we should think about why the first surgery didn't work or wasn't the final surgery. If there's been a problem like reflux develop after a sleeve, there's not much you and I can do about that. But if it's a second surgery or a third surgery sought for weight control, then we need to identify what actually is the problem, and is the next surgery going to address that problem? Because you don't want to just keep operating on people if the problem is somewhere else. Yeah. So sometimes medication in association with the first surgery, or psychological therapy in association with the first surgery might be the best way to go. We want to see, can we make that first surgery effective? Because if it's just that you've dropped out of doing these things, you've stretched your stomach pouch, or you've started grazing, fix the grazing. Don't have another surgery. Don't step into some malabsorption.
Yeah, and I guess grazing's not going to change with more surgery. It's more looking at what the habits are, and what are the triggers, and how we manage stress, and those kind of mindset issues. We've covered a lot of that in previous podcasts with Amber Kay and a few other players in the field who look at what are these roadblocks and how do I remove them, to understanding this new way of living life. And sometimes it's can be sabotage. Like, you get to the point where you feel wonderful and healthy and everything's kind of working out well, and then we tend to have that, oh, well, here we go, and we'll just start eating a little bit more or changing what we do. And it is a form of relaxation, but we have to define whether it's a relaxation around, aren't I feeling great, and the surgery's been a great success for me, and are these my saboteurs coming up because I don't know how to manage now that I'm a success, because I've never done that before. So I think exploring all those different avenues before leaping into the next, because generally the second surgery is the one that comes with more health implications and risks a lot of the time, with malabsorption of different nutrients and that sort of stuff. So it's also, are we getting into the point where there's more to manage due to another surgery, when it could be that we just need to address what we're doing on a day-to-day basis and get our portion plate and bowl back out.
Yes, exactly. That's the first thing to do.
Yeah, we do that a lot. Is, do you have a bowl? Do you have a plate? And they're like, oh yeah, I do. And I've put them away. I'm like, well, that'll be the answer, is just making sure that you're understanding and visualizing what a cup full of food is. And
absolutely. I think some people expect that if they lost 40 kilograms reasonably rapidly with their first surgery, and then they've regained 30 of them or something like that, that they're going to have another rapid weight loss after the second surgery. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen. Somehow our bodies figured it out by then, and it's already ahead of the game. So we really want to understand, what is the problem, and let's address that. If you've already had a sleeve, and so you've got the benefit of that, let's do everything we can to make that effective. So yeah, pulling the tools back out, getting some structure, getting some accountability happening again, is all really valuable.
Yeah, and readjusting, I think, is the key there. And also looking at the implications of financial time off for operations and that sort of thing. So working out whether we can make those changes. And yeah, I think, how often do you see that is the key, is just habits when we're looking at regain? Is it 50-50, there's something metabolic limiting the further weight loss, or is it more so the habit?
There's definitely something metabolic happening for virtually everyone, which is what leads to that little bit of weight regain anyway. That is quite normal. So for some people, it's actually looking at whether or not the amount they've regained is actually quite normal. So some people, it isn't anything they've done, and there probably isn't anything that's going to make it better. So we need to tidy up everything we can, pull out whatever strategies we've got, but not stress too much about it, and recognize that we're 35 kilos lighter than we had been. And maybe this is me. But finding out that you're not a failure, and that you have still succeeded, you have achieved exactly what the surgery was meant to achieve, is very comforting for a lot of people, just to recognize they haven't let it slip.
That's a great point. And I think there's panic, isn't there, when weight starts to come on? There's always that, I don't want to go back there, because there's pain there that we've obviously worked really hard to get away from. And I hear it quite a lot is, I'm regaining and I'm panicking because I'm just so worried that it's going to get out of hand. Do you have any strategies for that kind of the feeling of the emotional roller coaster of that fear that we might go back that way? What do you suggest in those kind of scenarios?
Well, I guess what we need to do is look at all avenues and be calm about it, because the more stressed you are about it, the worse the outcome, and I recognize and understand that fear is that this is out of my control. I'm feeling like it's out of my control. So we need to see, okay, well, where can we have control? What has slipped out of our own control that we can pull back in? So that might be some relaxation. It might be exercise. It might just have been feeling bulletproof for a while, feeling like, well, I'm a changed person. Nothing's going to affect me now. And then letting alcohol slip back in a bigger way, or something, whether it's food related, alcohol related, exercise related, just mind related. We just need to say, okay, what is within our control? And let's calm it down and take control where we can.
That's a good point. And I think we all do that it's like life is not a flat line, is it? We go really well and then we relax, and then we go really well. And it's not just the surgery situation that this happens. It's general life for everybody. And it's day to day. I remember I had a patient who rang one day and she said, I'm just so sick of managing this food. I'm so sick of thinking about, I've got to have my protein. I've got to have this. I've got to have that. And I said, yeah, but I haven't had the surgery. And generally this is what you need to do to remain healthy. It's just that it hasn't been top of mind for you. You haven't been taught this. It hasn't been your habitual way of living. And now it is. But people will say it's all right for you. You're fit and healthy and slim. But a lot of the reasons that prevails is because every day we look at what we've been eating and how we manage ourselves. So I understand that it's very different and it is tricky sometimes, and it's a lot of learning, but I put it forward to her that it's not foreign concept to all humans. And she was like, oh, that's so much better, because she thought she was the only one who had to do all this calculation and, think about what she was eating now. I said, no, people just do that all the time. She's like, oh, that's really good. And she just walked away from that phone call feeling so much less alone and laboured and burdened by this whole idea of
but now she
counting
was part
food.
Of everybody else.
I said, no, it's not new. So yeah, it is. It's such a steep learning curve after this.
And I think what people need to get to is the point of autopilot, where they don't have to think about things. psychiatrist Dr. George Blair West used to talk about the horizontal bungee, which really said that the more effort you put into something, the harder it is, the harder the bounce back. That as soon as you let go and you stop trying really hard, then everything starts to slip. So we need to do things slowly. We need to get kind of one juggling ball in the air and then another juggling ball in the air, and find things that sit comfortably with us so that we can do them automatically. And
that's a good way of putting it.
just planning your menu once a week enables you to go on a bit of autopilot for the rest of the week in terms of those food decisions. I've seen somewhere some enormous number put to the number of food decisions we make in a day, and that just gives us decision fatigue and makes it hard to do anything else. So if we've got stress going on in our life, or we've got a hard job and we've made a whole lot of decisions and dealt with a whole lot of things through the day, it's really hard to make a good decision about what to eat for dinner or what to eat after dinner. So get it on autopilot. Make the decision on Saturday morning, maybe when you've got a bit more headspace. Do the shopping, and all those decisions are made.
Yeah, for the week. And that's, you're bulking on your decision making then, aren't you? It's like budgeting it out, and then you've got the week to just pick it up and take it with you. It's it sounds like a chore, but there's something quite therapeutic about thinking about what you're going to eat, going and getting it, and organizing that as well. And there's some great options available as far as storage goes. We do know that after weight loss surgery, little containers and the insulated bags become our best friend, because if you are looking at long-term success, you're taking food with you a lot of places you go. And there are also great opportunities for, the BN, stackers, the snackers that you have, the tower, just all different types of ways to support yourself and get organised. And it's also very, it feels very, positive to walk into the week with that understanding of what's ahead. They're great for freezing foods and then just pick it up and go as you go throughout the week.
Absolutely. That Barry Prepper has been amazing for people, where they're just putting leftovers in there, putting it in the freezer or putting it in the fridge and grabbing it and taking it for work, or even when they're working from home, knowing that it's already set up there ready for them. Yeah.
Brilliant. And practice-wise, as a dietitian yourself, how do people find you?
I'm online at greatideas.net.au. So we do telehealth or in-person consultations. Our clinic is at Tweed Heads and at Goonellabah near Lismore. We specialise in weight management, including bariatric surgery, and also in gut problems, which is also quite common before and after bariatric surgery. So often we can get those things sorted out as well.
I see on your site you have a range of books around different food intolerances and, ways of eating that support people who have special dietary requirements as well. Is that an area you specialise in for food intolerance and allergic reactions and that sort of thing?
My focus is more around the gut food intolerances. I've certainly dealt with a lot of other forms of food intolerance that cause migraines or skin conditions, etc., over the years. But really, I've honed my skills around irritable bowel syndrome because it's been really common. I think it's probably caused by the food supply and ties in well with everything else I'm doing, because I think it's associated with weight management as well.
Correct. And what are the links there? What you mentioning in the irritable bowel and weight gain?
Yeah, well, I think that particularly around gut bacteria. So we do some of the microbiome testing and interpretation, and there's definitely a real pattern for people who have significant weight problems. I think there's more research to be done to determine how we fix it. But, there's some level of research there as a good starting point, and that's where everything starts.
It's all in the gut, isn't it? I think everything starts in the gut. So thank you for your time today. And it's always wonderful to talk about, where you're at, and you've been such a part of our community for so many years and done a wonderful job of spreading the word about portion management. We'll include all your contact information for those who would like to reach out to you in the show notes on the website. So Amanda Clark, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Jacqui. It's been my pleasure.
I'm glad to have you here. Thank you. See you soon.
Thanks for listening, and just before you go, we would love to hear your feedback, so please give us a rating and review. For other interesting topics of conversation and inspiration, come and drop into our Facebook community at BN Bariatric. If you've enjoyed our podcast, we hope you will share on your Facebook or Instagram and hit subscribe so you'll never miss an episode.